The day I bought those 5 acres just outside Briar Glen, I honestly thought I'd done something smart for once. Escaped the beige tyranny of HOA life, bought myself a little patch of dirt, a little peace, a little room to breathe. Turns out all I really did was move close enough for their queen bee to notice me. And the first time Nan Halbrook came flying down my gravel road in oversized sunglasses and a white blouse stiff enough to cut glass, I learned a hard truth real quick. Some people don't need legal authority to make your life miserable. They just need the confidence of someone who's never been told to sit down. My name's Carson James. I'm an electrician, self-employed, 39 years old, and for damn near half my life I'd been working toward one simple dream. Build my own house with my own money on land nobody could control but me. No mailbox color rules, no lawn height citations, no neighborhood busybody peeking over a fence with a clipboard and too much time. That was the plan anyway. The land sat just outside Briar Glen's boundary-zoned agricultural residential with a legal public easement cutting through near the edge of their development. I checked everything before I signed. County maps, deeds, zoning records, easement history, going all the way back to 1961. I did my homework because I'd met enough petty tyrants in life to know they thrive where paperwork gets fuzzy. So, when Nan planted herself in front of my truck the week I started clearing the site and snapped, "Excuse me, this is private road access, you can't use this," I didn't even feel surprised, just irritated that it had started so fast. I leaned out the window and told her calm as I could that it was a public easement county, recognized legally accessible and very much not her business. She crossed her arms like I'd insulted her bloodline. "That road runs through HOA land," she said, "which means it's subject to HOA review." I remember looking at her for a second, then looking past her at the trees, then back at her again, because sometimes your brain needs a moment to process pure nonsense. "I'm not in your HOA," I said. Her mouth tightened. "We'll see about that." Now, where I come from, that phrase usually means somebody's bluffing. But every now and then it means they've made being insane into a full-time hobby. Within a week, I started getting notices. Not from the county, not from zoning, from Briar Glen. Apparently, my construction trailer was disrupting the visual harmony of the neighborhood, which was funny because the neighborhood wasn't mine and the trailer wasn't on their land. Then came a cease and desist letter on HOA stationery claiming I was trespassing by using the easement. That's when I drove down to the county office to confirm everything one more time. The clerk looked over the records, smiled like she'd seen this movie before, and said, "If this is Briar Glen, I'm guessing Nan Halbrook." When I said yes, she laughed. That should have warned me how ridiculous this was about to get. That evening, I came back and found 2 orange traffic cones blocking the easement, plus a laminated sign that said "No entry, private HOA property." Real professional looking too, which almost made it funnier. Almost. I moved the cones, took photos, drove through, and started documenting everything. The next morning, I installed a dash cam in my truck and a trail cam facing the entrance. 2 days later, I caught Nan and her husband Frank dragging a giant concrete planter into the middle of the road like they were decorating for a deranged suburban parade. They added a fake HOA security sign, 2 staked right into county easement land. I sent the footage to zoning. A week later, things escalated. I came back near sundown and just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at what those lunatics had built across my only access point. A full white picket fence, mulch beds, little ornamental shrubs. Even a bird bath stuck in the middle like some smug centerpiece in a magazine spread called Petty Crimes in Gardening. It was almost impressive. The amount of effort they'd put into being wrong. I parked, got out, and stood in that fading orange light with the smell of fresh mulch in the air and a headache coming on behind my eyes. The whole scene was so absurd it didn't even feel real. This woman had weaponized landscaping. That was the moment I stopped hoping she'd tire herself out. I sent everything to the county, then hiked the last stretch in on foot using a drainage path I'd cleared. Next morning, I marched into the courthouse, filed a formal land use complaint, and handed over a file so thick the clerk raised an eyebrow. "I don't want a war," I told her. She gave me this dry little smile and said, "You've already got one. At least now you brought receipts." By the weekend, the county issued a removal order. The HOA had 72 hours to clear the obstruction or face fines. Monday morning, I showed up with a public works representative and a sheriff's deputy. Nan came storming out in heels with some guy in a golf visor trailing behind her, waving a folder and insisting the road belonged to Briar Glen under Community Charter Authority, which sounds official right up until someone with actual authority tells you to knock it off. The deputy cut through her speech in about 10 seconds. Ma'am, unless you're contesting this in court right now, this is an illegal obstruction of a public easement. Her face went tight and pale in a way I'll admit I enjoyed more than I should have. The county gave her one last day. She didn't remove it. So the next afternoon, they came back with a backhoe and a dump truck, and in under an hour, that whole little suburban fantasy got torn apart, fence shrubs, birdbath, all of it scraped up and hauled away while I stood off to the side listening to wood crack, metal clank, and one very expensive tantrum get reduced to landfill. I figured that would settle it. That was my mistake. 2 days later, a new sign appeared at the main road entering Briar Glen. Private road authorized HOA residents only. Same fake official look, same laminated nonsense, except this time it had been nailed to a city-owned utility pole. So I called the transportation department. A guy came out, took one look, said, "Well, that's illegal as hell," and ripped it down himself. That night I almost laughed. Then 2 nights later I heard tires on gravel. I stepped outside with a flashlight and my cordless drill. Don't ask why the drill. It was just what I grabbed and caught a silver SUV backing out fast. When I checked the road, somebody had looped a chain and padlock through 2 concrete-filled buckets to block the entrance again. I cleared it in minutes. But that time I filed a police report. The deputy reviewed the footage, looked at the partial plate from my trail cam, and said something that changed the whole shape of this fight. "This isn't just harassment anymore," he said. "This could be criminal mischief, maybe tampering with public access." That was the first time the whole thing stopped feeling like some neighborhood feud and started looking like what it really was. A bunch of people so drunk on tiny local power they thought rules were whatever they could bully other people into obeying. So I quit playing defense. I upgraded my cameras, added motion lights, reinforced the road, and then I started digging into Briar Glen's financial records, HO. As like to pretend they're private kingdoms, but they're still nonprofits in a lot of ways, and under state law, some of those records can be requested. When I got 3 years of documents, I found the twist that blew the whole thing wide open. The landscaping company that built the illegal fence had been paid from the HOA's general maintenance fund, and the invoice wasn't labeled obstruction of public easement for personal revenge, which would have at least been honest. It was labeled entry beautification main gate. Only problem was, the main gate hadn't been touched. That's when this story stopped being about me. I reached out to 3 Briar Glen residents I'd met at a zoning hearing. One was a retired teacher named Eleanor Sharp as a tack, and twice as brave as most people there. Another was Marcus, a plumber who looked permanently tired of everyone's nonsense. We met at a coffee shop, and I laid the invoices, photos, removal orders, and footage on the table. Eleanor stared at the records and said, "She used our dues to build a fence on land that isn't even ours, and lied about where the money went," I said. Marcus leaned back and whistled low. "That's fraud." There it was, out loud, no more guessing. We filed a joint complaint with the state attorney general's office. And once the AG got involved, the whole rotten wall started cracking. An investigator came out. Board members started resigning. A special HOA meeting got called to clear up misinformation, which is usually what people say when the truth has finally shown up wearing work boots. So I went. Nayan stood at the podium, trying to sound composed, talking about rumors, outside agitators, attacks on the community, that kind of thing. Then somebody in the back called out, "He's got more evidence than your treasurer," and the room turned. I stepped forward, handed over the inquiry letter, and said, "The only misinformation here is what got written on those invoices to cover up an illegal obstruction." You could feel the air leave the room. Nayan didn't have a comeback. She just stood there with her lips pressed together, looking like a woman watching the floor drop out from under her. 2 days later, the board suspended her. An outside audit got ordered. For the first time since I bought the land, my road stayed clear. But Nayan still wasn't finished. A few weeks later, somebody posted a flyer at the hardware store warning about suspicious construction activity near HOA border. No name, but please. Everybody knew who they meant. Then a newsletter went out inside Briar Glen claiming I was building some kind of commercial project that would lower property values. That was another turn in the story, and maybe the ugliest one, because lies spread easy when they flatter people's fears. So I went to see Jonah Lindell, a retired municipal judge who lived in the neighborhood. He read the flyer, read the newsletter, and said, "They're counting on panic. Whether it rises to defamation depends on proof, but it's dirty, and it's dangerous." He invited me to speak at the next open forum. I brought my permits, my zoning documents, my county approvals. I stood in front of that room full of folding chairs, coffee cups, suspicious faces, and people who'd been fed a pile of fiction, and I told them the truth plain. Single-family residence. Agricultural zoning, no commercial development, no authority from their HOA over my land, and yes, their dues had been used to harass me. Then Jonah stood up and backed it. That mattered more than anything I could have said. Because the strange thing about people is this: they'll ignore facts when they're inconvenient. But when the right voice says the same facts out loud, suddenly everybody hears them. 2 days later, my attorney Dana Morales called me. The AG had expanded the investigation. Auditors found a second set of books: off-record payments, hidden transactions, cash moving through fake vendor names. Nan, it turned out, hadn't just been obsessive. She'd been part of a whole little machine. Search warrants followed. The treasurer resigned. Investigators found handwritten receipts in an HOA storage unit, including a cash authorization to a private security contractor. Guess what date matched that payment? The same night that silver SUV showed up on my road. Not long after that, Nan Halbrook got arrested. Falsifying records. Misappropriation of HOA funds. Conspiracy tied to obstruction of lawful land use. The local paper ran the story, and suddenly the woman who used to parade around acting like she owned the county was just another defendant in a financial misconduct case. I wish I could say I felt triumphant in some noble cinematic way, but mostly I felt tired. Tired and relieved. Because the truth is, fighting back the right way takes forever. It's slow, boring, expensive, frustrating, and half the time you feel like the bad guy just because you won't let yourself be pushed around. But that's the lesson that got burned into me through all of this. Power doesn't become legitimate just because it's loud, organized, or wearing a name tag, and sometimes the only thing standing between order and abuse is one stubborn person willing to keep records while everybody else rolls their eyes and says, "That's just how she is." That phrase right there, that's how rot survives. In the end, the trial lasted 5 days. 3 guilty verdicts, 2 plea deals. Nayan got probation, community service, and a court-ordered ban from serving in leadership for any nonprofit. More important than that, she and the others were ordered to repay nearly $100,000 in misused funds. If they didn't, liens would follow. I didn't throw a party. I went home and kept building. The siding went up, the interior walls got finished. The county paved the final stretch of my access road, not gravel, actual pavement. And when I finally moved in, I hosted a small barbecue. Jonah came, Eleanor came, Marcus came, a couple zoning officers stopped by. Nobody talked much about the fight because we didn't need to. The house itself said enough. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the ridge and the air cooled off, I walked down to the place where Nayan's stupid little fence had once stood. There was nothing there now except a clean line of road and fresh native grass moving in the breeze. Quiet, open, mine. 6 weeks after sentencing, Nayan's house went up for sale. Briar Glen changed after that. Monthly budget reviews, third-party audits, no more mystery committees, no more rogue enforcement games, no more weaponized landscaping by suburban dictators in designer sunglasses. Folks from the neighborhood started walking dogs near the edge of my property sometimes. They'd wave. I'd wave back. Nobody crossed the line. And maybe that was the real ending. Not revenge, not even victory exactly, but clarity. Everybody finally understood the same thing I'd known from the beginning. A boundary line means something. So does the truth. So does paper. So does patience. Still, I'll admit it felt awfully good watching karma arrive with subpoenas, backhoes, and a county seal. So here's what I'm curious about. When somebody hides behind rules, titles, committees, and fake authority to control people they have no right to control, where do you think the line is between defending yourself and getting even? And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a bully, or anybody who thought power meant ownership over your life, tell me, what would you have done in my place?